Welcome to Dimensional Shift, where we explore and actively deprogram ourselves, seek the truth of reality through expanding our perceptions, and focus on full remembrance of our true selves. As we begin to connect to our true selves, we will also see the truth of this illusory reality and the way it controls us through our manipulated perceptions. As soon as we fully remember our true selves, we will also see the enemy for what it is and how to rebalance the system by freeing ourselves and assisting others to do the same, creating a domino effect into the evolution of human consciousness. Welcome back to Dimensional Shift. I'm in my car in Colorado, car camping in Colorado. If there are some sounds in the background that you hear, I apologize for that. I waited all day for the rain to stop and the wind to stop blowing so that I could record some. There is a highway nearby, so there may be cars, but I will try and pause when I hear them and make sure they get edited out as much as possible. I have been kind of waiting for what's next for me, and collectively, I have been returning more to the message and taking action now that I'm a little steadier in the embodiment of the message and looking forward to what comes next as things get shaken up a little bit more. The first thing I want to mention is that if you're on Reddit, you should definitely check out the subs that we have started either recently or taken over recently. They're very small still, so we're hoping to get some more discussion on there. There's r/dimensional shifters. We're going to be having podcast discussions on the pinned post at the top every week. There's r/true self, where we're going to be discussing ways and exploring the experiences we have as we move toward remembrance, and r/advanced souls, for those who feel like they may be led to become a spiritual teacher or a leader. We also have the Discord. You can find that on my website or in my Reddit profile, where we have live discussions once or twice a week. So let's talk about what the inner Archon is. This inner Archon is kind of just a catchphrase that I've used. These things have gone by many different names over the millennia. We have the Archons, the demons, Fae, Waitiko, which would be more of a collective madness, and even aliens. And I think a misconception that we've had in our community as we explore this matrix reality and all of that is that these Archons are external and they always work external. Even if they work externally through other people, that they don't work internally in us. So not all Archons are solely external. All the thoughts in your head that you have are not you. Unless you're consciously using your mind to explore something, solve a problem, and even then it is still an energy drain. We often have these inner Archons, these voices of I, come across in parasitical ways. They're energy drains, basically. There's the voice of criticism, of self and others. There's the voice of comparison, which can lead into the voice of unworthiness. We have that voice that's always searching for the solution to whatever's going to make us happy in the future. And then there's the voice of the past, where we have those random reviews of our past mistakes. There's a whole bunch of other voices. Whatever feels like is obsessive and you can't break away from it, that's probably the parasite. It's really interesting to think that we can't stop thinking. Unless you've been meditating for quite a while and have really worked on silencing the monkey mind, it's almost impossible to stop thinking. An interesting tip I heard from Eckhart Tolle was to listen for the quietest sound you could hear. Because while you're listening very, very hard, you can't think. It's a really quick way to kind of start slipping into that observer. And even as you listen, you can become conscious in that moment as you listen. So these inner Archons control our worldview via perception. It becomes us versus them. It's very much about survival. We can go into a victim mentality where everybody's against us and nothing ever goes right and we have such bad luck, and we all know that these kinds of thoughts perpetuate these circumstances as well. that can create a scarcity mindset where there's never enough and we have to hoard and keep ourselves safe and protect whatever we have or who we are, whatever it is. There's the idea of unworthiness, where we start seeking external things. We seek external validation. We think that the cars and the money and the new devices and all of these things are going to make us happy. It's always seeking something. And that's part of the way the parasite works, is that we are being fed upon, and so we have also identified with the way that the predator works. When we're identified with our thoughts and emotions, we often react instead of respond to what the other person wants. So next week we're going to be talking about you as a perfect being. We'll explore how that's always selfless. And that goes directly to what we're talking about today, because you can substitute the idea of ego for the inner Archon. And so if we're always about the other person, then there's no room for self. There's no room for ego. And this parasite is naturally just left out. So when we're controlled through our thoughts and emotions, we react rather than respond. It's the parasite that's reacting through us to play off the other person and create more suffering. It's all about the idea of loosh and suffering and all of this, which we've explored in previous episodes. So if we're not our thoughts or emotions or our life story, who are we? So if you ask yourself, who am I? You're not the one who asks or the answers that you get, but you are the one who listens to the question. You are the one behind the thoughts. You are the observer behind the experience. The I am is a perfect being, which I said we'll talk about in the next episode. It's the attachment to these thoughts, emotions, identities, beliefs, and stories that causes suffering. For example, the victim mentality is a story all about how everything in our life goes wrong. And so then it seems that everything in your life goes wrong to confirm that for you. So in order to get out of the victim mentality, you have to distance yourself from those stories that you tell yourself, or that the parasite tells itself or yourself, or I don't know exactly how all that works. It's like the parasite, because we're so identified with the mind, it's hard to think that the parasite is even talking to you, because you're not even communicating with it. It's just telling these stories and we're accepting them and then moving in that direction. But when you get sick of the stories, when you're tired of your suffering, as the Buddha talks about, when you're done with your crap, then you can start moving on to rejecting the stories. So, okay, I'm no longer a victim. I'm no longer going to believe that. I'm no longer going to think that everybody's out to get me. And even if somebody acts like they're out to get me, I can quietly observe that and let it go. There's no attachment. It's this wave where it comes in and you let it go just as quickly. All that we have here, our identities, our beliefs, our stories, the thoughts, emotions, they're all temporary. We are eternal, and we extend past all of this once we can connect to the I am and once we remember who we are. I had an interesting experience the first night I was here in Colorado. I was meditating, and I was in a really deep meditative state, almost that stage right before you fall asleep. When I'm in that state, I can hear these messages, and it's almost like another stream of consciousness, another line of thinking, but it's not coming from my own mind. It's very hard to explain. But I had this very brief moment where I became lucid on that other side of the veil. And I talk about it being over there because it's not something I have yet been able to re-access. As soon as I had that lucid awareness of not being exactly where I thought I was or who I thought I was, I felt this strange yank back into this side of wherever we are. It was like being grabbed and being yanked energetically back into this side of the veil. And I could feel on the other side all of that bliss and peace and vital energy that has been lacking in my life. Not the peace necessarily, I've pretty much found peace, but that vital energy and the joy, it all got sucked away, and all of that vital energy was suddenly redirected toward thought and toward the parasite. It was very, very obvious what was going on. But I also had this understanding that while the energy field felt like it was being manipulated externally, it was also coming from within my mind. So it is kind of like a projection, but it's very hard to explain. So sorry if that was a little rambly, but I'm still trying to understand what happened. And like I said, I've yet to be able to recreate that, so I'll try to keep you updated with how that goes. So the best thing you can do is to listen to these thoughts, whatever they tell you, like you would a small child throwing a tantrum. So I have this funny story of my son when he was 3, and how insane the mind can be, because this is exactly what our minds sound like sometimes. My son was 3, and I had a soda, and he wanted a drink, and I said, no, it has caffeine in it. And he started crying and wailing, and he said, but caffeine's my favorite. And number one, he had no idea what caffeine was. Obviously, he was 3. And it just shows that when you listen to your mind, all of these things that it says to us, number one, aren't true. They can't be verified. They're not based in any kind of reality. They're just perceptions, and they're based on an agenda of keeping you small. The interesting thing is you can't push it away. You can't tell it to shut up or try and ignore it, because that will make it hold on tighter. It'll entrench that victim mentality like we were talking about earlier, and it will fight back. And this is a really interesting idea that I have noticed as well. We talk about spiritual targeting and suppression and all of this. The parasite of the mind is very, very capable of defending itself in whatever way it can. I watched a movie called Oculus like a month ago. It's a horror movie, and it's actually about this sinister mirror that controls people's minds and makes them kill people. Like, I don't know, it's a horror movie, but it can make you think that you're doing something else when you're doing something else. So, for example, the main character, she picks up an apple to bite into, and it had been laying down next to a light bulb. She was changing light bulbs. So she picks up this apple, and she takes a big bite out of it, only to realize that it's the light bulb that she took a bite out of, and she has all this glass in her mouth. So then she's pulling it out, and she's freaking out because, she's bleeding everywhere. And then all of a sudden her brother comes in, and well, then she actually had taken a bite out of the apple. So it can show you whatever it wants to show you. And if you watch this movie, it is pretty gory, so I will give you that caveat. But if you watch this movie and think of the mirror as the mind, it is kind of a fascinating study on how this weird system works. So the best thing you can do is bring awareness to these rampant thoughts, these obsessive thoughts, these critical thoughts. Witness it. Let it throw its tantrum. It cannot actually harm you unless you identify with it. Identifying with the stories is what causes suffering. That is why they say that when you find enlightenment, you end suffering, because you no longer identify with the stories of the self, of the I, of the ego. It's all just happening. It's not even happening to you, because you are not fully here in this reality. This all just happens. It all just passes away like waves in the ocean. If you found this episode helpful or insightful, please share it with a friend and leave a review or comment. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. I host twice weekly open discussions on the podcast topic on our Discord server. If you'd like to join, head to dimensionalshifter.com/Discord. If you're on Reddit, come join the subreddit r/dimensionalshifters or send me a DM. My username is dimensionalshifter. Keep deprogramming, keep connecting, keep listening to your intuition. This is it. This is what we've been searching for our whole lives. Connection to our true selves.